I'm pleased to announce that we are launching the Justice Department's first ever Office of Environmental Justice to oversee and help guide the Justice Department's wide-ranging environmental justice efforts. Like all parts of government, it will get its own acronym, OEJ. And third, the Justice Department is issuing an interim final rule that will restore the use of an important law enforcement tool, supplemental environmental projects, subject to new guidelines and limitations that I will also be issuing today. Administrator Regan and I know that the communities most impacted by environmental harm are not isolated in any one part of our country. Environmental crime and injustice touch communities in all our cities, towns, rural areas, and on tribal lands. Although violations of our environmental laws can happen anywhere, communities of color, indigenous communities, and low-income communities often bear the brunt of the harm caused by environmental crime, pollution, and climate change. They include communities, fence-line communities, where exposure to toxic air pollutants have caused scores of cancer-related deaths. They include communities where students have been exposed to harmful emissions from boilers in their public schools. They include communities where infectious diseases have spread because of inadequate wastewater management. And for far too long, these communities have faced barriers to accessing the justice they deserve. In partnership with EPA, our new OEJ will serve as the central hub for our efforts to advance our comprehensive environmental justice enforcement strategy. In our environmental efforts, we will prioritize the cases that will have the greatest impact on the communities most overburdened by environmental harm. And together with our Civil Rights Division, Office for Access to Justice, Office of Tribal Justice, and United States Attorney's offices, OEJ will prioritize meaningful and constructive engagement with the communities most affected by environmental crime and injustice.
Should this be punished like war crimes? A growing movement of activists, lawyers, and political leaders say yes. They want to make ecocide, or widespread destruction of the environment, an international crime.
If you put serious damage to nature at the top level on a par with serious damage to people and property, you're saying that it actually is as bad, not just legally, but morally, to seriously damage the environment.
So far, most of environmental law works like this. When harm is done, companies or governments need to make up for the damage they've caused by paying fines or compensation. Ecocide campaigners want a shift from regulation to criminal prosecution.
If those key decision makers have to take into account the fact that their personal freedom could be on the line if the decision that they make or if the project they decide to go forward with has the potential to seriously destroy nature, then that has a way of seriously concentrating the mind.
The concept has a history. In 1972, Olof Palme, then Prime Minister of Sweden, accused the US military of ecocide, of its use of Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. The deployment of the herbicide created extreme environmental destruction and left millions of people disabled. Palme was ahead of his time. But with the climate crisis escalating and worldwide protests demanding quick action, the push to criminalize ecocide is back. In 2019, the small island state of Vanuatu was the first country to raise the issue before the International Criminal Court. The Pacific country is suffering from rising sea levels and temperatures, both a result of climate change. Meanwhile, what started as a civil society-led movement of environmental activists around Scottish lawyer Polly Higgins, the cause of the Netherlands-based Stop Ecocide Foundation has lately found resonance at the highest global level. The Pope has endorsed it. The European Parliament has discussed it. national parliaments in several countries around the world are in talks about it. And high-profile leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, have signaled that they would support criminalizing ecocide at the international level. So, does this mean we will see the Amazon rainforest taking a lawyer and suing illegal loggers before the ICC? Or are we expecting a CEO to be taken away in handcuffs anytime soon? Well, not yet. There has been no agreement over what actions legally constitute ecocide. What kind of magnitude amounts to an international crime? Do humans have to be harmed? Climate change is the collective result of millions of destructive acts that we are all committing. So how grave do these acts have to be in order to make someone a climate criminal? And who could be held legally responsible for ecocide? Determining that, not an easy task for the international team of lawyers who spent the past 6 months working on a definition of ecocide that could be legally robust. This is what they came up with. Ecocide means unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment being caused by those acts.
Alors moi j'ai beaucoup d'espoir que nous verrons un jour ce crime d'écocide figurer dans le statut de Rome pour la survie de notre planète.
As with genocide or war crimes, the standards for prosecuting someone at the ICC with this definition of ecocide would be very high. But making ecocide a crime independent of human suffering would be a landmark moment in both international criminal law and the fight against climate change.
So if there was a massive environmental destruction, that in and of itself can be a crime. That in and of itself can be an ecocide without reference to necessarily human beings, which I liked a lot.
Some European countries like Sweden have already signaled their readiness to work with this definition. That is crucial for the success of the campaign because only states parties to the ICC can propose an amendment to the court's charter, known as the Rome Statute, which then requires a 2/3 majority for passage. Even in the most optimistic scenario, mobilizing this kind of support could take years. And some environmental justice experts still warn that it may not prove as strong a deterrent mechanism as hoped.
It's not going to stop ecocide. That's all I'm saying. It's not going to stop ecocide. You know, we need system change. We need like really substantial revolutionary shifts in how we are living our lives and relating to the natural world, and the powers that we give corporations, and just how the whole thing is set up is premised on environmental destruction. You know, our systems rely on environmental destruction. So criminalizing some people will not change that.
For now, the idea of charging humans with ecocide may seem idealistic, but it is exactly that shift in mindset that may soon be required. Scientists warn that irreversible climate tipping points are already being reached and time is running out to prevent an environmental catastrophe. Advocates for ecocide laws say that their goal is to both implement legal deterrence mechanisms and to advance public awareness, so that real and lasting change can happen.